connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is life as teacher, benevolent, loving, caring teacher. So it should be a fun conversation because we often feel at the effect of life and punished by teachers, for example. And so this will be a fun exploration. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we're talking about life as teacher. And oftentimes when we think of teachers, we think of stern figures. But what if we were to think of life as a benevolent, generous mentor that is shaping and guiding us, often through extreme lessons that seem quite punishing, but that ultimately turn out, or certainly can ultimately turn out, to be some of our greatest gifts. Our greatest gifts often appear as our greatest challenges. And the idea here is life is happening for me and through me rather than to me. And this perspective is radically different from the way that so many of us interact with life and our experiences. We often feel like we are at the effect of our experience, at the effect of life, and that we're victims. So let's look at the impact of this notion of victimhood and how it transforms, or how we can transform it into empowerment through a partnership with life. So I have a client that I've been working with for some time, and this person was very much, in their own words, stuck in the drama and the experience of victimhood. And good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning. We're talking about life as teacher and a benevolent teacher rather than a punishing one. So I was speaking to this person yesterday, and we'd been working for some time. It really felt like we were spinning wheels in certain ways. And they even said that they felt like they were spinning their wheels a bit, that we were doing all this work, but there wasn't a whole lot of change, and they were still feeling very victimized and very much at the effect of life and circumstance. And this is a very powerful person who just was burying their power and capability in this woe is me kind of attitude. And they had the opportunity to remove themselves from their workaday circumstance for a bit for vacation. And they were able during this time, removed from that situation, to actually integrate. And they came back with this radical shift of perspective that we'd been working on for so long, which was a radical shift out of victimhood into, I'll call it, sovereignty or ownership of their life. And this person had just an incredibly trying year this past year, with physical things, emotional things, relationship things, political things in terms of business, all kinds of massive disruptions and upsets, and deep challenges. A real what was experienced as a very punishing year. And I know that someone has made a massive transformation when they're able to take on this perspective. But this person said, it's interesting to look back at it all and to recognize the gifts and the gift. Because what happened was they went from this suffering place and being at the effect to taking their own life in hand and taking ownership and recognizing that there were all these behaviors that were part of not feeling good enough, not feeling adequate. So there was over giving, there was a neediness and over eagerness that precipitated a lot of the drama, actually. And they were able to recognize this coming back. The experience of this person, for me, it was shockingly different, night and day, where this person just stepped into their power. They stepped into owning themselves in such a way that the striving to prove themselves kind of disappeared, and they were stepping into ownership of who they are in a full and whole way. And the neediness fell away, the need to or the anxiety around gaining approval and validation, rather than asking for recognition, just owning their worth. It was super powerful. And what I see happened, was that they made this transformative movement from being at the from life shaping them to emerging, and it's emerging from the chrysalis, so when we think about the caterpillar to the butterfly, it is such an overused metaphor, but I think in that metaphor we don't typically understand the depth of it, and how really in so many ways it's so appropriate. Because what happens to the caterpillar when it goes into the chrysalis is it actually dissolves. It becomes liquefied. It's not that somehow the caterpillar morphs from the caterpillar form into butterfly. No, it actually is dissolved into what we call imaginal cells that then somehow reconfigure into this butterfly form, which in itself is just like high magic. Like, how does that happen where something really dissolves and reconfigures in the space of this magical cocoon, and then emerges as something that can fly? So it's such an apt metaphor, which is why it's used so much. But to recognize that process of the dissolution, and that's what happens to so many of us in life, where we are tested and challenged and pushed and dissolved, where we're kind of taken down to the very most basic form before we can reemerge as something new. And when we're going through it, it looks like punishment. It looks like pain and suffering. And one of the things that we spoke about, this person and I, yesterday, is that one of the things I learned when I got to spend some time volunteering at an event for the Dalai Lama was pain is a given. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. And actually, the quote that I got from that experience was, all suffering is the result of misconceptualization. That it's the way that we're thinking and constructing our stories and our world that is the source of suffering. So pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional, or pain is unavoidable, shall we say. And this transformation of life as teacher, it's oftentimes where we are pushed to suffering so much, the victim experience that is so deep and persistent, that at some point we just say, enough, I've had it. There's got, like, you reach the breaking point. Maybe you hit rock bottom and say, there's got to be another way to be. Like, I've had enough of that. I'm done with it. And that's what this person yesterday was saying multiple times. I'm done with that. I'm done with it. And there was a strength that emerged in this person that was extraordinary. And it was so discontinuous. Oftentimes I can see gradual change in people, and this was just like bam, all at once. We'd been working. It was like a quantum jump. And it was extraordinary to witness. I heard another quote yesterday from Hemingway, where someone I was told it was maybe in, I don't remember which of the Hemingway stories, but someone asked, one of the characters asked another, well, when did you change, or when did you have that realization? And the answer was something like little by little, then all at once. And that's what I witnessed in this person yesterday. And they were able to consciously recognize and acknowledge life as teacher, and recognize all these hardships as a gift. Their words, they recognize the gift in all that hardship. So it's interesting when we talk about love, we often talk about love as gentle, love as kind, but I think that if we can recognize that these challenges that are put forth from life is love to bring us to our greater expression. It's not punishment. So I think, like, if we think about life as teacher, we often think that we're being punished for our transgressions. And I think it's important to, well, I've found it incredibly valuable to shift that perspective, not that there's punishment, but that we're given multitude of opportunities to step into creatorship in collaboration with life. And the more I learn, the more I see, the more convinced I am of life's intelligence as an essence in and of itself, life as its own intelligence, its greater intelligence, which would mean that we are part of that and just a very small expression of this greater intelligence that is life. And the lessons that life teaches us, I believe, or these are my latest hypotheses, I'll say, because I hold belief with open hand as an evolutionary process. But I believe that life is about propagating life ultimately in the greater whole, and that doesn't mean every instance of life, but life expressing itself, life knowing itself through these myriad expressions. And if it's not punishing, if we don't, if we're not burdened by irredeemable sin, which is so much a part of our Judeo-Christian cultural orientation, that there's a foundational badness that we can't overcome. I don't ascribe to that notion of that sin. I believe that we're here to expand life. That's, again, trying that on. I invite you to try it on, see how it fits for you. But with life as a collaborative and benevolent mentor, rather than punishing us for transgressions, just guiding us, and sometimes really hard lessons, sometimes guiding us with a hammer and a fist, it feels like anyway. But sometimes we don't listen. Like I know for myself, I've learned to listen more carefully through brutal lessons that I've had in life, where I got a message and I didn't pay attention. I got the message again, but a little bit more adamantly, and I didn't pay attention. And eventually what happened is I ended up feeling like I was hit by a 2x4, and I got, it finally got my attention, so I've learned to listen because I didn't really enjoy being clobbered by the 2x4, and I was a number of times. And I find that learning to listen allows me to be in the dance, allows me to be in a greater flow, in collaboration, and to be recognizing life's opportunities, and to be allowing myself to be guided in the direction that life is taking me. The gift of this is that we can relieve ourselves of regrets, because we can allow them to be the things that we regretted. We can allow them to be part of the shaping of our being, that are teachers. And I think we can learn joyfully, or we can learn through struggle. The struggle is our resistance to those lessons that are made available to us. And sometimes it's just not easy to see until we're through it. When we're in the midst of suffering and pain, it's very difficult to recognize that all we need to do is to shift our mind and our perspective, and the suffering and pain, the pain that we're causing through our resistance, sort of reshifts and dissolves. But in the midst of that suffering, to tell somebody, I actually was in a position where I just was so deep in depression for most of my life. And I actually had a new friend who said to me, just essentially, stop being depressed. And the truth is that, it's kind of an obvious truth. If I knew at that time how to stop being depressed, I certainly would have, because it was not fun. But I didn't know. And I believed in all my stories. I believed all my stories of victimhood. It was all true for me. And so somebody telling me life is a teacher, it felt punishing. So I can understand that. I can relate to that. And I can say there's another way there are a multitude of other ways to tell the story, so that we can actually collaborate with life in her infinite wisdom and intelligence. And it becomes a much more joyful experience. It becomes a much easier experience, even when we experience pain. because we don't need to have the resistance to it that deepens that pain and turns it to suffering. We can just be in the experience as we're experiencing it. We don't have to go back and say, oh my gosh, boy, did I have so much pain, where we prolong things and we perpetuate things and we identify with that experience. There is some value perhaps in recognizing what that experience was in contrast to where we are, so that we can recognize that change happens and that we've actually made progress. But we don't need to dwell there. We don't need to dwell in the pain and the stories that encourage that pain. And so life can be a profoundly benevolent teacher, and a stern one when we don't listen. And sometimes that's a challenge, to decipher what's the message, what's the opportunity. But one of the ways, I think, to move into that space is to recognize life. So each morning, and this makes it such a silly thing, but it makes such a difference for me since I've started doing it, is when I get up, I just shout, "Good morning, beautiful life." And it just transforms my day, transforms my beingness into welcoming. So I invite you to just try that or something similarly goofy, to just see what an incredibly powerful impact it can have to embrace life actively as partner and teacher. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is such a profound pleasure and privilege to share these morning musings together. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And until next time, so much love.